Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started back if everyone wants to take your seat. Remember, if you've forgotten, go ahead and sign in out front if you have not done so already. So, welcome to our second session, The Bearded and the Beautiful. No, I'm just kidding. It's Advances in Right-of-Way Data Management and Cost Estimates.
How's everybody doing this morning? Great. All right, so my name is Tom Linsemeyer. I'll be talking about the right-of-way cost estimate tool that we've been working with the right-of-way unit on developing. Go ahead and get started. So here's the agenda for today. We'll talk about defining the problem statement is why we started looking into developing a tool for the unit itself. Talk about the tool solution, what we've come up with, how to access the tool if you have an NCID or without an NCID, because sometimes consultant PMs, sometimes consultant PMs don't have NCIDs, therefore we need different forms of access for them. And then we'll go through the intake form. If you're familiar with the process, then there's alternatives that get added into that intake. So we'll go through that as well. So the problem statement. So the way that cost estimate requests currently come into the unit is somewhat disjointed, whether it comes from an internal source, an NCDOT employee, or a consultant PM. A lot of times it's emailed in. Sometimes there's links. Sometimes there's different types of files, files that can't readily be accessible by the unit staff that's processing the request. So one of the things that we were looking to do is to streamline that and limit the type of documents that are coming in. That'll take a lot of manual processing time away. And then there's a need for a singular point of document input and storage. So like I said, like documents come in, sometimes it's an email, sometimes it's a link to a file, and they have to sift through. So if there's a singular point of input and they can deliver exactly what they want to deliver, then it kind of eliminates a lot of the manual process that's done on the front end. So the solution, pretty much in all, we're looking to automate the process, standardize input, and like I said, have a singular point of input. So we're developing a singular intake point for all cost estimate requests coming into the right-of-way department. So this is going to be a SharePoint form that's integrated with some back-end automation, utilizing Power Automate tools that are within the NCDOT environment. This is going to take a lot of that processing time from intake to delivering it to the appraiser, adding any relocation costs, and then getting it back to the requester itself. And then we're going to update the workflow from intake to approval based on defined business processes that we worked with the unit to define. So what we're going to do there is we're going to make sure that as items come in, there's business processes in place to automate the request going from step to step, and then integrating that next bullet point where we have alerts that are going to be generated. So it's going to automate alerts that get emailed out to the next individual responsible for the next step in the process. Again, eliminating a lot of time, inputting forms, inputting data into forms, emailing forms back and forth, emailing descriptions of what needs to be done. That's all going to be automated, set in an email. So when the individual in the unit processes that request and sets it up to the next step, it automatically gets sent to the next person. So in addition to the tool itself, we generated some documentation. The cost estimate tool status tracking spreadsheet that's already in place right now. If you have been submitting any cost estimate requests in the last maybe month or so, a couple of months, that spreadsheet's already been in place and it's already being managed by right-of-way unit staff. So you can go into that spreadsheet at any time and see what step in the process that your request is in. And then in addition to this, since we're kind of overhauling the entire process for a requester, we're generating some documentation, and an appendix will be put on the right-of-way SharePoint site to reference if you have any questions about the process and how it moves along. So to go into it, this is the status tracking spreadsheet. You can see here, you can see you got your project number. It says STIP number up there, but what we're doing is we're generalizing that to a project number because it's not only STIP projects that are going to be requiring cost estimate requests. So you can do your project number, you have who's requested it, date it was requested, what step it is in the process, and then the staff managing this is going to put in the expected due date. So that's the date. There's going to be a place in the form where you can request a certain due date, and that's all well and good, but in the guidance you'll see based on complexity and the size of your request, there's going to be an estimated amount of time that request is probably going to actually be completed and returned back to you. And so that due date is going to be input by the staff manually to kind of let you know this is when you're probably going to get it back. And they can update it at any time if it is moving along through the process quicker or not. So this is, so I'll go into how to access the tool here in a second, but this is going to be located on the right-of-way SharePoint site. Currently, we're working on kind of retooling the site to give it a little better user experience. There's a lot of sub pages on there right now, a lot of information, and we wanted to kind of pare it down and make it a little more user-friendly and a little more easily navigable for anybody coming in. So when you go into that site, you'll see a nice little header right there for cost estimate requests, and we're not only going to have that spreadsheet, which I just showed you, but we're also going to have a link to the form, a link to any guidance as well. So, all right, so like I mentioned before, there's two ways that you're going to be able to access this tool. It's if you have an NCID and if you do not have an NCID. So if you do have, if you do have an NCID, which is typically NCDOT staff or any consultant PMs that are embedded, then you'll just go directly to the SharePoint, right-of-way SharePoint link, and you can get to that via Microsoft 365. You can search DOH-right-of-way, and it should be there. If you have access to it, it'll look like this. The link will be right there under that header. If you don't, then that'll be an opportunity to email Tracy Jackson. She's the right-of-way unit staff that's going to be managing most of the processing the cost estimate request. So you would email her requesting access if you were not able to just automatically request it when it comes up. And then she'll get you access. And then once you get the alert that you do have access to that site, you'll be able to come in here and click that link. So, and again, this right here is the location where that's going to be. There's going to be more up there. So by the time the deployment of the tool is ready to go, the site will be redesigned. And this is going to be close to the top of the site, so you'll see it. So if you don't have an NCID, so if you're an NC DOT PM and you have maybe somebody that on your project team that you're just going to task with making that cost estimate request, and they're not necessarily an embedded employee and they don't have an NCID, they'll go through this process. So they'll get instruction from you to email Tracy as well, and then she's going to send them a link via email to access the form and the SharePoint list itself. So an email we send to them, and then they'll have to kind of step through a three-step process to get authentication to be able to get access to that. And that's listed right here. So they'll get the email, open the email, that's over there to the left, select open. They'll get the code, get another email with the code, enter that in, and then down here, this is what they're going to see when they finally do get access. This is going to be a SharePoint list. It's only going to have their individual requests on there. But there will be a SharePoint list, and then they can select the new button over there on the left to be able to start a new request. And this is going to be the only link, so they're not going to have access to the SharePoint site itself. So this is going to be the only access they have to the form. So let's talk about the form itself. So like I said, this is going to be a SharePoint form, and it's going to be integrated with some back-end automation to Power Automate, which will help easily move the request through the process from one spot to another. And then all forms, I'll go here with this, so I have a link to the forms. So all forms must have an attachment. It's not required on here because of the functionality. We weren't able to do that, but all forms must have an attachment. And we have on here the guidance there that only PDF and XLSX files are going to be allowed to be looked at. If you give it a different type of attachment, then you might get a message saying, can you deliver this in a different format? We can't limit the user currently with this functionality to only give PDFs and XLS, but in the guidance and right here on the form, it instructs only to get that way. That's just going to eliminate, like I was saying at the beginning, there's a lot of opportunity, or a lot of times they'll get DGN files or links to just file folders that have, tens of files in there, and they'll have to sift through and figure out which one's which. So this just kind of eliminates a lot of that manual digging process, or maybe communication that's going to need to go back and forth because they need to have it in a different format because they can't read it. That gives us that. And then in addition to that, we also we're not able to disallow individuals once they submit and back out of this form and not to open it back up. But we do stress that once you do save and submit this form initially, to make sure that all of your information is in there, because we can't guarantee if you open it up and change something that information is going to be seen by the individual processing the request. They might have already sent it out the door, sent the email to the appraiser with your information, so they might not even be able to access that. So some of that information might get lost. As for alternatives, we'll get to alternatives in a second, but you want to make sure that you attach all of your attachments on this parent form for all your alternatives. You might have 2, 3, 4 alternatives, but you want all of the attachments to be right here. And I'll show you that form here in a minute, but there's no spot to attach any PDFs or XLS to the alternatives itself, alternative form, but you're going to link that form to this one, so all of your attachments are going to be here. And then to get to the alternatives form, it's kind of fuzzy down here, but on the footer, you'll have, there'll be 2 links. One link that says, direct me to the alternative form if I do have an NC ID and if I do not have an NC ID. Because it's different types of access, so we have to make sure that we give different links for different individuals. All right, so alternatives. The biggest thing, like I mentioned before, was making sure that you put in your parent appraisal or parent request up at the top, and it is a drop down, so you'll be able to select the one that you have. So it'll link your alternative to that. Your alternatives are independent of your parent form. even though they are linked. So when you come up with like your parcels are going to need to be independent, every parcel that's related to that alternative itself, instead of just the additional parcels or maybe less parcels. Yeah, indicate parent. Okay, so once navigating away from your alternatives page, the requesters, because sometimes you're going to have multiple alternatives. When you navigate away from this, there's going to be an alternatives list page. I don't have a screenshot of that, but it's going to look a lot like that initial list page from when you're going to add your initial cost estimate request, and you're going to be able to add a new one and then link it to that parent appraisal or parent request on there. So you're going to be able to add multiple alternatives, but you're going to need to navigate away and add another one. It's not going to direct you directly to the next form. And like I said before, all documents must be on your parent request. So moving forward, there are obvious limitations, which I'm sure a lot of you know, with just using the SharePoint forms itself. So there's opportunity to explore just improving the user experience in general. And then if we are able to migrate to a different software, that new software is really just going to be to enhance data analytics for the right-of-way unit itself, especially in the form of dashboarding, so they can pull out different metrics that they want to report on or they want to see on an annual basis, just to see how the processes are going. But that whatever is migrated to and whatever is the new option, nothing on the project manager's input process is going to change at this point. So we're going to have this one rollout of kind of updating that new format of how things are going to be requested. And then once we get to that point, we're not going to be changing things up a lot. It might just have a different look and feel. So yeah, in addition to that, improve user experience, integrate geospatial data into the solution. So if a request is generated, we might be able to just plot that on a map, or use the project number, and then we'll be able to see, especially across other departments within the program or within the department, if they want to see where right-of-way requests or acquisitions are taking place, they'll be able to pull this up and be able to see in location to where their projects are going to be. Yeah, and then access requirements. So the last thing is, we've had issues with trying to get people with NCIDs versus non-NCIDs to get access to the form. So if we can try and migrate to a new solution, potentially everybody will be just in one spot accessing the form. And that's it. Any questions before I turn it over to Heather?
Okay. Is there a time frame for all that?
Yep, we have about a month from now it should be deployed. We're going through testing right now, so within the next month to 6 weeks, we'll have the form guidance, the spreadsheet's already in place, and then the new right-of-way SharePoint site will be available to use. All right. Thank you.
Just want to make sure it was on. So a couple things before I start. I probably should have gone first so I could just kind of give you some context. We have never hired an engineering firm that wasn't under a right-of-way contract for anything. So when we've known we've had this problem forever, and it comes in all different ways, and it kind of just is a little bit chaotic. So for the first time, we hired Gannett Fleming, Geodecisions, Claire and Tom, to come in. And I just wanted to make that statement because I like the fact that we're kind of using forces outside of right-of-way to help us. And Chris Warner's here. He was a firm believer in that. and glad to see him here. And so that's one of the things that we've done is realize that we can't solve all of our problems. Maybe we need help from some other place. So just wanted to put that out there. Secondly, you've put a right-of-way person in front of the lunch period, and you know how we love to talk and sell things. So I'm going to bring it in on time. The boat's going to make its way into the dock. We're going to eat lunch. We're DOT folks. It's the most important hour of the day, so don't worry. And I don't have a clicker, do I, Shane? Okay, all right. Space bar? Okay. And thank everybody for coming out today. We really appreciate everybody's support, especially with what we're doing, and we hope to support you too. So we're awfully glad to do this. Today we're going to talk about smart sheets and how we're going to use data, interpret data, and for the first time allow people outside of right-of-way to be able to view data. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Now, when I was putting this together about data, I started to bore myself, okay? I'm not going to lie. So I thought maybe what we could do is just use some movies and history to kind of get us through to where we're going and see if there's any parallels. Not saying we are NASA, but anyway, so just to kind of get us started, wanted to talk a little bit about ROAMs, and that was our first attempt at trying to get some sort of data for right-of-way into a solution where it wouldn't be pen and paper. We launched it in 2013, and our intended goals were functions in a workable software to generate forms and report data. It sounds great. Entered data would produce form generation even better. Workflows would be by notification instead of email. Who doesn't want that? Data would produce metrics, programmatic reporting. Data entry would be mobile. GS functionality, great things. That's what our goals were. And so lofty in 2013, but we gave it a stab anyway. And so over here, because I used Apollo 13, I love that movie and love the space program. Anything about a shuttle, love it, right? So I put these up here because I thought they were kind of parallel in a way. So here we have Jim Lovell and Fred Hayes. They're doing geology training in Hawaii in 1970? I can't see it. They're training about how to walk on the moon, right? What they're going to get, right? And then also Lovell practices deploying the flag. So a lot of training, right? A lot of things, a lot of prep work, which is what we experienced. A lot of years of working towards a goal. And something happens, and Houston, we've had a problem, which was said by Jim Lovell. The movie changed it to say, Houston, we have a problem. I don't know if y'all know that, but he didn't actually say that. And we had some problems with ROAMs, right? We couldn't get it to work. There were some issues. We're not going to get into it because that'd be a 3-day thing. But we discontinued the ROAMs project mid-2022. And that's an actual photograph of the 3 who went up there. So we kind of did some, what went wrong? What are we going to do now? So one of the things we realized real quickly with our lessons learned is that all of the right-of-way functions are not going to operate in a coordinated effort in a closed loop because this is just a portion of what they are. And so that was part of what our problem was. We had so many things going on, and you're just trying to cram them into one thing and say, let's make it work. And what we found out is that it did not work. And also, another lesson learned, good thing Chris Warner's here, is no one benefits from a closed-loop software system but the person who uses it. So that was one of the things we figured out is, we can make it better, and we can let other people see this data because people are always telling us how they need to see our data. So how can we make it better? And that kind of, I love this scene. This is where they come and tell Gene Kranz, who's played by Ed Harris, that the carbon dioxide is rising, And they talk about how there's different filters on on the service module and then on the lunar module. And he gets very disgusted after saying this is a government, I can't believe this is a government operation. And then he says, I suggest you gentlemen invent a way to put a square peg in a round hole and rapidly. So that's kind of where we were. So then we started to get in a little bit of crisis mode. What do we do now? And one of the great things he also said, which I love this is a quote for everybody, not just right away. Let's work the problem, people. Let's not make it work by guessing. It's great for anything in your life. So what we did was we had already started using this thing called Smartsheet for some other things we were doing. And so we started looking at, when we saw ROMs tapering away a little bit, not working and kind of not working the way we wanted to in testing, we started looking at, well, can't we just take something of our right-of-way information and put it in a Smartsheet and see how that works out? So what we did was we just started testing. We just started pulling B reports. Everybody loves a B report, and saying, why can't we make a standardized B report? Why can't we make it available for everybody to look at? And by the way, maybe we can make it produce some data for us. So many, many months of trying to figure out, what does everybody need to see? What does project managers need to see? Who needs to see this? Who needs to see that? So at this point, when we thought all was lost, our spaceship had exploded, we just kind of said, let's see what options we have out there. And we developed new right-of-way goals for data management system. These are the things we wanted for the new system. Kind of the same things we wanted for the old system, right? But we had much better idea that we can't put everything that we do in one system. So we prioritized. We said, what's our most core essential functions? What are our trunk line functions? What do we do? Can we put that into a system and see what it develops? So the first thing we had was data standards. And standardizing right-of-way reporting statewide, we had to do a lot of things, make it consistent. We also had to make it on existing B reports because everybody they know what those look like. It's just an Excel spreadsheet, right? But there's 4,000 different types floating around with all different information. You're not sure if they're up to date because you've been sent 30 in the past 30 days. So we wanted to get rid of that. We wanted to make it consistent in 14 divisions. And consistency in dashboarding, especially key right-of-way project milestones. Figure out where those are. What does everybody want to see? What do the project managers need to see where the status of their project is? Excuse me. And then make each division have its own sheet with its own inputs. Make each division responsible for what they're putting in. So we developed this, which is basically a big old B report. We put it in Smartsheets, and then we put all these categories in there. So what it does is, if you're a project manager and you're working in Division 1, you're working in Division 14, when you come to your Smartsheet, you're going to see the same thing. You're not going to see a different right-of-way reporting system. It's going to be the exact same division after division. We also put in here several things about assignments. So right-of-way can assign a consultant right-of-way person that particular parcel, and they'll be responsible for coming in here and putting it in. So that was another thing we wanted in addition to data standards, which was kind of the most important thing that we had. And another thing for data standards, just to kind of show you, these are actual, I took an actual screenshot of what we have. And I can't move this thing, but yeah, I can. I just wanted to come over here and show you a little bit. I know it's hard to see, but just take my word for it, okay? These are these are all 14 divisions and all the sheets they have. There's a ton of sheets, right? But nobody has to see those but us. So we hired someone to help us use this as an architect, and maintain this. So all the heavy lifting done by what's here is done by us. But you get the benefit of seeing the one sheet and seeing how that produces. But everybody has the same one. They also can come here within this file, their report B backups, and use it to however they see fit within a project. We'll get to that a little bit later. But only the DOT staff for right-of-way can see the entire thing. Direct input. This was one of the second things we wanted. So tired of somebody putting in something on an Excel spreadsheet and then sending it to somebody else who takes that information and puts it in another spreadsheet. Didn't want that. So what we wanted was the ability to be able for that end user to put in, if they're out there meeting with the property owner, put it in right there. If they made an offer, put it in right there. And so what this does is it gives us the ability to eliminate errors in data copying, which is a problem, and also to use dynamic filters. And what this does is when we assign a project to somebody like Atkins or Carolina Land or whoever our right-of-way consultant is, they can only see what they've been assigned. So across the board, for any sheet that we have, if you're not assigned a line, you're not going to be able to see what everybody else is working on. So we found that to be very important. That way, just to keep a little bit of integrity amongst, the consultants that are working there, and also not to confuse them with the thousands of lines of data that we have. Here, firms assigned work cannot see projects unassigned to them. And also it eliminates multiples of data. I can't tell you how many B reports are on my server right now in one project. On some projects, I'm not lying when I tell you there are 40 different reports of data, right? And you don't know if they're today, were they 3 weeks ago? I don't know. So this eliminates a lot of that when you have direct input. Excuse me. We also have this direct input project summary. So for all of you in the divisions that need to see a more comprehensive look at what the projects are, this is basically a project report of everything in the division. So I just chose a division, and you can see up here, you've got 3 different projects here. You've got the parcel counts, every count that you need to see, how much you've spent on the project, how many offers have been made, a high-level summary. If you want to print it out in the division, you can see everything. So just like those meetings, if you're in the divisions here, where you had to go sit in there, I know you know what I'm talking about, for a whole day with your division engineer and go over every single project you had. In this case, this will actually take the place of that because they'll be able to see the status of every single thing that right-of-way is doing. Live data results. This is my favorite. I chose Division 5 here because they've got a pretty good dashboard. One of the things we had to have is live data results because we need to make sure, reading those lines is one thing, right? And making a list is fine. But being able to see it visually, how your project is doing or how your division is doing, is a different thing altogether. So that sheet that is being directly inputted out in the field for every status of a right-of-way milestone, initial contact, appraisal request, offer made, appraisal received, relocation, settlement, closing, all those things generate this dashboard here. And what this does, it gives you a total and complete look at all the information, all the right-of-way that's going on in one division. So for example, here there's 34 projects, knows how many parcels, knows how many are completed, how many are utility priorities, how many are relocation, and then based on that, what's the total status of complete versus non-complete? What's this status of where it is? Settled, closed, initial contact. And here, you can even break it down by your projects. So you can have percentages done by projects. Your consultants, you can figure out every consultant that's doing a right-of-way project in your division. How many projects do they have? How many parcels do they have? Where's their status? You can also break that down by firms. You want to see who has the most work in a division, you can figure it out. So you've got every consultant that's doing work in your division, it will put out a production report. So there's a lot of ways we can look at this data. And over here, you just see a different graph of it. Here, if you just want a snapshot of how many projects and what the right-of-way status is It's easy. It does it for you. You don't need to ask anybody. You just come here, and it produces, hey, this project's 100% complete. We have all the right-of-way here. This is 100% complete. This is 0 because they just put it in. This one's 35. This one's 24. So if you just want that high-level snapshot of everything, you can come here and get it. And it's the same thing with the agents, including DOT agents. If you want to see kind of where the work is, so if I have an agent and they're almost 100% complete with their work, it'll show here. You got agents that got 0%, it'll show up there. I really like the live data results, the dashboarding. It's also customizable, which is one thing that I like. So each division engineer gets the chance to customize their dashboard. I know Ruben's customized some for 8, and this just gives the people at the top leadership levels out there the ability to see what they want to see. So that's another great thing is even though we have standardized data, however you want to see that data is completely up to each division. External unit functionality. This is where it gets fun, I promise you. This is like in Apollo 13 when they're just going across the moon trying to get back to Earth. It's really boring, nothing to do but sit around, get cold, eat frozen food, all that kind of stuff. This is where we are. We're going to get there. External unit functionality. One of the things we also talked about was, can we communicate with other units? Can we put columns in here and say, is this a utility parcel? Yes, we can. So on the B report for each division, when they fill the information out, they're going to indicate, is this a utility parcel? Is it a utility priority? If they indicate, yes, it is, with a check mark, then that information automatically goes to a utility dashboard. So that anybody in utilities, whether you're at the division or the statewide level, this is not quite ready. The reporting is, but the dashboard isn't. You'll be able to see your utility priority parcels in the division, in project management, and in central utilities. So that's something that's new and improved. We wanted to make that because everybody knows how important utilities are now, right? And we get tons of questions about where you're on this parcel, where you're on this utility parcel. We want to buy it at this time. So when you put in a utility parcel, you can also put in the date that you have to buy it by. So it'll also produce to you, did you meet that date? Did you not meet that date? How many of your parcels did you meet by the utility relocation date or by the utility acquisition date? So there's a lot of different ways we can use this with other groups to help them so that we also don't have to send emails and calls about what's this project, what's that project. They can come straight to here and get it. Another thing we had that we wanted to do was we also wanted to make a column for the rail so that any parcel, and this applies to some divisions, not all, but any parcel that is a rail parcel like these here, P project's a rail parcel, they're going to select that it's a rail project. And what it does is it creates the same dashboard all the way around. And our rail project managers, our rail division, they don't need to call and figure out where you are on a project. They're going to be able to see all the rail parcels in the state in one particular place. So we're really excited about that. I don't know if I can help every group, okay, but we're doing our best to try and help as many as we can. And here's just to give you a little bit more of the external unit functionality. You can see here, we've got our projects in summary mode. And you can see it's got the quotas down here. It's got the totals, how many parcels, how many are done, how many are rails. This was the view that you would get if you were just looking at the master data sheet. You would see who it's assigned to. The rail would be able to see how much money we appraised already and how much we settled for, so you can keep track of what we're spending. And you would also be able to keep track of how many have closed. Where are you in terms of delivering that project? That's what everybody wants to know these days, right? Where are we in delivering that project? And again, this just gives you a little bit of metrics that we have in external unit functionality so you can see it. Many, many different looks. So if you are, I think this is utilities. Yeah. So if you're in utilities, you can actually produce all 14 divisions and you can see the status of the entire division projects, where they are with their utility parcels. Not to say that that's not going to eliminate all questions that people have, but it should eliminate a lot of the questions about where you are on this. Also here we have incomplete and complete. I know it's really hard to see, but this just gives you a snapshot of what percentage of incomplete each project is, each division is. You can get that here as a sort of a much more mathematical look of it rather than the visual dashboard. Metrics. This is a hard one, right? Because it means a lot of different things. There's a lot of different truths you have to come, to yourself with, which is number one, it's really good information because it helps you in areas that you need it. But number two, you're getting ready to admit something you probably don't want to admit to anybody, right? Which is you got weaknesses, you know where they are, but you don't know what they are in terms of mathematically. Well, now you're going to find out. So this is a kind of a serenity now moment when we're dealing with metrics. And it's important how we use them because basically the way we're going to use them is it's going to tell us what our time cycles are. What are our time cycles from initial contact to offer? How long does it take for us to get an appraisal? How long does it take for us to settle and close a claim? How long does it take from start to finish? And how long does it take from project start to project finish? So we've got a lot of different ways of counting and using metrics for right-of-way that are going to help you, really to help us see kind of where our shortcomings are as far as how we deliver projects and where we can improve to make that better. I know most of you are going to think it's appraisal, so we'll just leave that there. So what this does is for the metrics, and everybody can look at this, right? We're going to have metrics available. It's going to be available in terms of a dashboard for most of you, but everybody can look at it. And basically what you're going to see is just kind of an aggregate of numbers, right? But down here, this is where you get to your cycle times, right? So you're going to be able to see exactly what the cycle times are on your project, in the division. You can see it however you want to maneuver it. You're going to be able to look at it in that fashion. So what we've done, and what I didn't put up here because we actually have a live sheet right now that we're running, we do metrics on how long it takes Central Right-of-Way to pay a payment. So when the field sends in a final report to pay a property owner, we've agreed, we've settled, or we're getting ready to condemn, how long does it take us to do our job? And we broke that down into not only how long does it take for the process, but how long does it take for each person that handles it. It took a long time, and Robert Woodard's here today. He was a big part of that effort. But we figured out that we could actually put every person that touches that payment from the time we receive it to the time we pay it, we could put them in a metric cycle and figure out exactly where the problems were. So when we look at our dashboard, I can immediately tell you what the holdup is. I can see the bottleneck up in right-of-way, exactly where we need to kind of release that valve. Before this, we never really knew, right? You have to go to everybody and ask, hey, how many claims do you have working on or something like that. So this was a really big this was a really big moment for us to be able to do this, but it does reveal uncomfortable truths. So you got to be a little bit okay with that, which is not always the greatest thing. And like I said, we know right now with our metrics appraisals, I think we're about we're less than 90 days. We're 82 days out, so we're less than 3 months for appraisal, which is better than most states. I want to tell you that, okay? I talked with Tennessee a couple weeks ago, and they're having appraisals coming at 5 months. So at any point, it's nice to be able to calculate what that is. At any point, we can look at it and say, well, this is the problem, or there's a different problem somewhere else. Mobility, this is great too. This is actually screenshots from my smartphone, from my iPhone. So every sheet that I have, every single sheet that I have, and I have like 130, okay? But for different reasons. Every sheet that I have, if I want to look at it on my app, I can pull it up and see it. And my workflow notifications here, I can also see those too. So it tells me when I need to go in and sign something, I can go in and sign it. When I want to check those metrics on where checks are, I can go in there and see whose fault it is, right? I'm just kidding, it's nobody's fault, but you can go in there and see it. Also, one of the things I can see too is all of my dashboarding and all the different individual breakdowns of my project. However I've customized those, especially if you're in the division, you can get it right on your phone. You can see it. So this is what I do. Sometimes we look at the residue. This is for the residue sales dashboard. We put all of our residues into a smart sheet, and as we sold them, we updated the smart sheet, and it put out a dashboard for us that told us how many we sold in a year, how many the divisions sold in a year, what they sold them for, what the asking price, the average asking price was, what the average selling price was, how long it took to sell. Anything you want to see, you can dashboard it. And that's exactly what we did here. Which divisions sold the most? We can have that here too. So we had a really good representation of this. And like I said, this was in 2020 when we started this, so we had a good background on it. But you get the app, you can see anything in your phone. It's good to have. If you're a project manager, division engineer, you're on the road, you got it there. Excuse me. So that's kind of the core, our goals and where we are with those goals right now. So one of the things that we look at, and I call this the near future, okay? This is GIS appraisal and statewide dashboard. We are going to, that raw data sheet that you saw is actually going to have 2 columns in it where we're going to put an NC1 tax ID number, because we have to get that number anyway for our title. That number is going to start generating a link to a GIS report so you can see visually the status of your whole project on GIS. We are also going to take all of our appraisal work and put it in a smart sheet for better reporting, and so that there will also be people who will be able to see the status of an appraisal project as well. If they can, this will make for better metric time. We'll be able to break it down not only by the statewide appraisal function, we can break it down by appraiser, we can break it down by office, we can break it down by project. So we can actually see if there's a project lagging, we might need to add more appraisers to it. So we can address that quicker and better than just somebody having a feeling that we're not doing right? And also statewide dashboard. This is one of the things that I'm excited about. 14 sheets all reporting the same data. Well, you can take all that data, put it in one sheet, and it will actually report a statewide status. So for example, we can see how many claims we're working on at one time, which is about 11,000, by the way. We just got it up in 2 weeks ago. So the statewide dashboard says right now we have 11,000 parcels in smart sheets, right? It tells us how many appraisals we've done in smart sheets. It tells us how long it takes on a statewide level to get those things done. It's not quite there, and it's something that will be reserved for the chief's office and senior management to see that kind of statewide status of right-of-way, but we'll be able to see it in those terms of how many appraisals we have done in the past month. How many appraisals did we do 2 months ago? How many, what was our settlement amount? What was our average percentage of increase on settlements? So these are things that you all get your looks as a project manager and as a division, and then we get a look at a statewide status. So these are coming in the near future. We're very excited about these. And just to give you a little bit, I want to make you understand that this is real. The GIS thing is real, okay? I've had a lot of questions that it's not real. So we have actually, I put in here, just because I knew I was going to get questions on this, we actually have 2 columns in Smartsheets that say, put your pen here, and then it'll generate this link. Before you even ask, Eric Wilson says, hopefully by the 1st of June, we'll be able to have this into some sort of production mode. So we're excited about that. Again, working with Eric Wilson to produce this visual management tool. The assigned agent will enter the NC1 map pin into the Smartsheet to create the link. Like I said, they're going to need that information anyway. When we request a title on it, got to have that info. So it's not a really big lift just to put it in there. And what happens is, it produces that. So not only can you get all of your project summaries in your Smartsheets, but you can also get a GIS view of it. Okay? And over here we have open, settled, condemned, closed. You can customize it. You know, we'll put these up here and try to make it as simple as possible. One of the things we don't have is we don't have the functionality of design, so you can't see exactly the design of the project. So we've got this little corridor that comes through here that touches all the parcels. Maybe something we try to work on, but that's a lot. But to be able to kind of produce this, every parcel that's in there will produce this visual for you. Right-of-way data possibilities. So we're going to get through this little thing that we're doing. But what are we looking at a little bit further down the road? What we're excited about is there is a possibility that we might be able to integrate with SAP. We don't know if we will or not, but that would certainly eliminate more workflows for us. I don't know that it's going to help project management or rail or utilities or any of you folks. It would help us eliminate duplication of work in SAP. Integration with DocuSign's a possibility as well, something that we're looking into with Ellen's help here. Seeing if there's a possibility that we might be able to use Smartsheets to produce something that can use DocuSign to sign documents. Also, can it generate forms? We've talked with Smartsheets. One of our goals was to have a product that would generate forms. And Smartsheets they sent their engineer and says, yeah, it might be able to be done. If you can do DocuSign, you can generate forms. They've never seen our forms. Like, we've got 1,000, right? But it really would be nice if we could work it out to be able to have that system that you're already inputting data into to auto-populate all of our forms. We do a lot of legal work. You guys know this. We sign deeds. We do mortgage releases. All the things that are associated with the closing, all those legal documents have to be done by us. And so there's a ton of paperwork. You can't automate that. You can try, but when you're in the legal world, you've got to have that paper. So getting Smartsheets to generate those forms for us would be great. It would save us a lot of time. It would help us not have to spend so much time on that and be able to spend time on other aspects that we need to. So maybe it could improve a little bit of project delivery. And then, so individual project dashboarding. It's a possibility. We've talked with Smartsheets about it. We're upgrading so that there is a possibility that if you are a project manager and you have a project P5707, just say for example, that's probably Jamal's. But right now, you can't see an individual project dashboard. You can only see the summary of where you are. But there's a potential that we could produce an individual project dashboard for right-of-way for all of the project managers. And that's a game changer. For me, if I was a project manager, that would be a game changer. To have my own, on my phone, individual project dashboard. So I don't need to ask right-of-way anything. If I've got a question about what I can see, I can call you, but I can keep up with it in real time. That's a game changer for me. And not for me, but for you guys. And so I'm really excited. Of all the things that help us, I think I'm more excited about the individual project dashboarding because I know what an impact that is, right? And I put this over here. We're back to Apollo 13 now because the boring part's over, right? We're done. And we're way ahead of schedule. This is actually Jim Lovell's notebook for Apollo 13 mission here. This here, right? Which never came to pass because he didn't need to use it. Even though there was all that work in it, he really didn't use it. But doesn't mean it doesn't have value, right? You've worked hard, you've learned lessons through your preparation. It's not something you just throw away. You found out things about yourself. Maybe you challenged yourself and you have more confidence in an area you didn't. But just to give you some idea, quantitatively, about how much something that you don't use is worth, this was auctioned off for $400,000, FYI. Now, I know what you're thinking, right? This is my workbook right here, right away from me. I'll be glad to start the bidding. If anybody wants to get close to it, more than welcome. But the point is that even when you think something is irrelevant, doesn't have worth, it still may have worth in the end, right? So for us, all those years of Rome's, everything we did, not worthless, right? It helped because it helped us focus where we needed to be, kind of where we needed to go, and made us realize we need to share this information with everybody, make everybody better. So for our last little Apollo 13, we have failure is not an option. Actually, it was never said by Gene Kranz. Gene Kranz was the flight director, played by Ed Harris, like we said. He never said that, but it's said in the movie, and it's one of the most memorable quotes. Never said it. One of the reasons why I love Gene Kranz is because he turned that on its head and then wrote a book about Apollo 13 and called it Failure is Not an Option. Don't know if you know that, but I actually have that book at home. And I went to the Smithsonian and got a picture of Gene Kranz's vest worn during Apollo 13. And this is I wanted to make sure that this was in here because this is a picture of Mission Control. And a lot of times you talk about a lot of individuals, especially in movies, you concentrate on one or two or three people. But this picture here, there was a lot of people involved in making sure that those astronauts got home. And the same thing with us, not only in right-of-way, but DOT. There's a lot of people involved. A lot of people involved in making ROMs. A lot of people involved in smart sheets. A lot of people involved in IT. A lot of people that don't really have anything to do with this that inspire you to do it. So it's not just one or two people, it's a whole team effort. A lot of you guys are involved. Even though you know you haven't been to anything, we may call on you to help us, right? Help us help you figure out how this can be better. So I wanted to put that up there just to show what a great team that was to be able to do that. And there was actually a quote by NASA, this is nasa.gov, that said Apollo 13 was to be the third lunar landing attempt, but the mission was aborted after rupture of service module oxygen tank. Still, it was classified as a successful failure because of the experience gained in rescuing the crew. The mission spent upper stage successfully impacted the moon, and that was said in 2009. And that's kind of how we feel about this. We're really excited about where we are with our data production. with our collection, with how we visualize data, with how we share it. And all those years we spent, we consider a successful failure. So we're here now. We're glad to be here. We're glad to be sharing this with you. And I'll be glad to take any questions. I'm done. I know it was a lot. Jennifer.
That was awesome. Will the right-of-way certification be built into this process, or the deadline for production of that be in this?
It's not now, but it's certainly something we could talk about. Put it in your notebook, okay? Put it in our notebook, and let's talk about that as something we can look at. But that's a really, really great point.
Is there a limitation on how many people can access it at one time?
No, you can share it with read-only views, okay, to a lot of different people. The licenses are limited, but I have to pay for those, not you, so don't worry about those. And then there's edit-only access as well. So those are the three statuses that we have, but we don't have limitations on read-only view, which would be most of you, what you would be doing unless you're inputting into it. Yes?
When you start adding projects to Smartsheet,
Yep,
are you doing that as soon as the project has been sent to right-of-way to start acquisition?
that's correct.
Have you ever thought about starting to add in, as far as metrics, tracking some projects prior to that, so that you can keep up with, say, number of potential parcels, relocativities, utility impact, so you can do forecasting for that?
We can. The problem with that is that those parcels tend to change a lot before it gets to us. So it's difficult. It would be hard for whoever the agent would be to put it in. You would also have to go ahead and assign that to a firm. So if you don't know who your right-of-way firm's going to be at that point, you really can't work in it unless you're DOT until you assign it to a firm to do that. So we've looked at that. It's not an option on a large scale, but it is an option for advanced acquisitions. So as we start, every parcel that we pay is going to have to be in there. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I think you're addressing this in the right away, that's our future. But as far as the our future goals, but as far as your live data results, do you have access to that?
If you do not have access to a dashboard that you want to see, and I did not bring this, but I can't do it here. Yeah. If you will send that information to me, hfulghum@ncdot.gov, HFULGHUM, just like here, or like there, at ncdot.gov. If you'll send that to me, I will forward that to Alan So, who is our Smartsheet architect and maintenance engineer, and he will put you on the right sheet. If you're a utilities person and you want access to all 14 sheets, fine, send it. Whatever you want access to, send it to us. Let us know what you want to see, because we're not going to go out and hunt you down and say, hey, we got this great thing. We want to tell you about it, and then make sure that you have all the tools so that you can do the best job that I know you guys want to do. Yep.
Great presentation. Quick question. We have some projects that are going to restart.
Uh-huh.
The last right-of-way estimates were done, say, in 2020 or 2021.
Uh-huh.
Nothing has changed in terms of design or impact.
Yep.
So is the turnaround time on the estimates sooner than a new project? Is there a difference?
It should just be an update, right? If you don't have anything that's changed, you would still send it in, but when it's assigned, it should be more like, has the land values increased in the past 2 years? So it should be less time than normal, but we don't specifically say, hey, yeah, it's just going to take this amount of time, but it should. And we may give you the full time just in case there's something that changed. Maybe there's something that's built that wasn't built there before, right? Maybe CVS has been built. We got to look at that. So we may give you the whole time, but just turn it in sooner. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Yes.
Jeanette White, Division 14.
I know who you are. Yeah.
Yes, is there a live version that you can maybe show, which I think you were saying just a moment ago that potentially you don't have access to kind of show a live version of what you use, but I think it's great stuff.
Oh, we've got live versions of everything but the GIS.
Is there anything you can show now?
As a live right now?
It's really hard to see, but I think it's great information. But if not, then that's.
I can't, well, I could if it was on my phone, but I don't know how. I can show it to you on my phone. Just hit me up later. Yeah. I'll show it to you. It's live, believe me. I have, like I said, I have 130 sheets. So only if you're like managing or you have a license is it difficult, but it's live. We're running it. In fact, we have told our division right-of-way agents that they are to operate in the smart sheet only from here on. No more paper B reports. I don't want to see one. I don't care anything about it. I don't want you to see one. I want you to be able to come to this sheet, get all the information you need. All right? Anybody else?
Did you mention there was an app?
Yeah, you can go on your iPhone to download apps. You can just download the Smartsheet app, but you need to set up an account first through DOT because you have to go in through the normal process. And if you need a link for that, send it to me. I'll send it to Alan. We can get that set up for you. He'll give you all the information on how to set that up. Then go download your app and you'll be able to see it. Smartsheet. Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
On the GIS tracking, is there a way we can add a color to a parcel that shows that it's a Z-claim? Because then that will tell a lot of the story as to why it's.
Potentially. We'll investigate that. Potentially. We might could say if the name has Z or something like that in it, we'd have to do a naming specification, but there's potential for that. Karen?
Yeah, so my question is, if you have a parcel that's acquisition and relocation, you go into the acquisition side and then you check the little relocation
Uh-huh.
box.
Right.
Okay? But what, is that only for residential and business relocation?
Mm-hmm.
Where do miscellaneous relocations?
Same place. Any relocation, you check relocation, there's a relocation subsheet that will populate, and you can put your information in there. And also, it's too hard to see here, but once you get to the end of the sheet, it will actually ask you, have you demoed the buildings, right? What's your demo date? It'll ask you that so that you can actually close that parcel, not just by settling it, but by demoing that building.
So it doesn't matter if you have, say, 2 miscellaneous relocations?
Nope.
The numbers?
Nope. You go to the reload sheet, you can put displace E1, displace E2, displace E3, displace E4. The relocation sheet will allow you to add all those displacees. If you're moving an apartment building, you've got one parcel, and this has happened to me, 97 displacees, you can go to that relocation sheet, put all 97 displacees in there. Your project manager can see the status of every 97. If they want to look at it, they sure can, and see it all the way out. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
I don't know where you were and where you've come. You've made this look so easy.
Thanks.
And I know that it is not. I hope everybody in the room recognizes the magnitude of what you and your team have done, not only to help out right away, but to help out right away staff, divisions, and project managers, and utilities, and this is truly a game changer, and it offers you all a great opportunity to engage with your partners and customers, and to tell the story of the project, the program, statewide. So I know it took a lot of work, and I just want to congratulate you and your team on
Well, I thank you, but like I said, it was a team, and technical services was a big part of that team. Wendy and I talked every day during COVID, every day about this and other things. You were also a big inspiration to that, Chris. Matt Clark, really big into helping us. A lot of project managers, we just asked them. I just called up the ones I knew, Chris Smitherman, all my folks from Div 7. Called them up and said, hey, what do you think about this? Didn't tell them what I was doing. Just in case it failed. I didn't want to put that out there. But a lot of different people, location surveys. We worked with them on the GIS thing. You know, our legal folks, AG's office, a lot of different people. So we're really proud about this, and Ellen's going to help us make it even better. So we're excited. Anybody else got any questions? Look, 5 minutes to go. I told you I'd bring this boat in. Thank y'all.
Everybody, so before we go to lunch, Derek Weaver is going to give us a brief blessing.
Yeah, so everybody, before we head into lunch, we just wanted to go ahead and bless the food here before we get into there. So if y'all wouldn't mind, just bow your head so we can say a quick prayer. Lord, we just want to thank you for this day, and just thank you for everyone that could be here today, for the presenters, the attendees, and for all the folks that are just ensuring that this event is running really smoothly. As we prepare to go into the ballroom for lunch and some time for fellowship, we just pray, Lord, that you just bless the conversation and the food, the nourishment in our body. And Lord, we lift this up in Christ's name. Amen. Thanks, y'all.
Okay, everybody. So we're going to break until 1 o'clock, where we'll start back up with environmental permitting and utilities panel discussion.